Hey, it's Victor again, and in this video you're going to learn the number one most important thing that you can do starting today that's going to allow you to get ripped quickly. And this has to do with losing excess fat. And yes, this is also Alex's tip that he shared with me, and I sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier. And I told you that it had to do with cutting your carbohydrate intake. Now, if you just go and you take that information and you reduce your intake of carbohydrates, you're probably going to run into some very common problems with people who try low-carb diets encounter. Problems like irritability, not feeling satisfied after you've eaten unless you've eaten some carbs in your meal, low energy, sluggishness, all of these kinds of things. And I experienced these same symptoms, I guess you could call them, when I first started experimenting with low carbohydrate diets. And that's because cutting carbs is only half the story. Now, before I explain the other kind of part of the story, why is it important to cut carbs? Why do you need to cut carbs? And how does it relate to you getting a six-pack? Well, to make a long story short, when you consume too many carbs, and if you're like 99% of people, you probably do consume too many carbs, particularly if you live in the United States. But when you consume an excess of carbs, they get stored in your body as fat. And if you remember going back to the very first video that I did, I told you that there are two basic conditions that you need to meet in order to have visible six-pack abs. And they were low body fat percentage and good muscle tone. And you know, no matter how good your muscle tone is, no matter how hard you've been working your abs directly or how hard you've been lifting, it's not going to matter if you can't see them over the layer of body fat. And the primary way that you get rid of this layer of body fat is through eating, and specifically through cutting your carbohydrate intake. Now, that aside, eating in excess of carbs is also extremely unhealthy. Now, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but these things tend to go hand in hand when you're doing things that are healthy for you both in the short term and in the long term, in terms of longevity of life and in terms of quality of life and quality of health and freedom from diseases and chronic illnesses. That tends to go hand in hand with the kind of body that you want. I mean, health is health. And it's true that you could look really good and be really unhealthy, and vice versa. But generally, when you start doing the right things, you don't have to worry about these individual pieces. Your health and your appearance begin to come together into a whole. So cutting carbs is your first most important thing to do. Even if you're totally out of shape, and even if you're in good shape, you've got to reduce the carbohydrate intake. Now, what kinds of foods are we talking about reducing here? I'm talking mostly about things like grains. You want to cut out grains completely if you can. Bread, cereals, pastas, rice, potatoes, fruit. And let me just stop there and talk about fruit for a second, because it deserves a mention. The problem with fruit is that modern fruit is very unlike the kinds of fruit that you find in the wild. If you take a modern strawberry, it's this big, and if you look at a wild strawberry, it's about this big, and it does not taste anywhere near as sweet as our modern fruits, because these days fruit is bred for taste and for appearance. You see it in the grocery store, you see it in the market, and it looks good, it looks tantalizing, so you buy it. And that's the whole game, and that's the whole purpose of creating fruit that looks good, so that you'll buy it. However, most fruit today is very, very, very high in fructose, which is the primary sugar in fruit. very low in nutrition, and very beautiful, but very low in nutrition. Now the problem with fruit is that there's a popular perception of it as being a health food. And a small amount of berries is healthy, but the truth is that you don't need nearly as much fruit as you think you do. In fact, you don't really need any fruit at all. I eat about a handful of blueberries every couple of days, and I never have fruit cravings or anything like that. And that's something that I'm going to get into a little bit later and explain in more depth, and that's something that I explain in the 6-Pack Success course. But suffice it to say for now that you want to stay away from fruit except for a handful of berries every now and then. And the reason for that is because the primary sugar in fruit, fructose, is preferentially converted into fat by your body. So it's really one of the worst things that you can eat if you're trying to get a 6-pack. Not only that, but this sugar interferes or disrupts the production of your male androgenic hormones, which contribute to fat loss and increase your muscle tone. So you want to stay well away from that as well. So you have to cut your carbs, but how much of them should you cut? And the answer is you want to really get rid of as many of these sources of carbohydrates as possible because you don't need them. Now you've probably heard, as we all have been told, that the primary energy source for the body is carbs. That is a very, very misleading statement because it's only partially true. The truth is that yes, that things that you put into your body, the fuel that you put into your body, eventually, ultimately, is converted to some type of sugar that your body can use. However, that does not mean that on the level of intake, i.e. what you put into your mouth, that sugar is anywhere near the optimal energy source, and in fact, it is not. So what then is the optimal energy source? And if you're taking out all of these carbs, what are you going to replace them with? And this is the kind of other half that I was talking about, and this is what Alex told me. When you take out all of these carbs, when you cut your carbs, you have to replace them with high quality fats. Yes, fat. You've probably heard this all your life, that fat is unhealthy, that eating fat leads to heart disease and this and that and the other thing. And I'm here to tell you that a lot of that is bullshit. Pardon my language there, I know it's a strong word, but it's true. You've been misled a lot in terms of what is healthy and what isn't healthy eating, and it's something that frankly should get you enraged, or should get you at least passionate enough about to where you want to find the truth and re-engineer your body to getting the kind of body that you want, because it has so much to do with what you eat. Now, if you're cutting all these carbs and you're replacing them with healthy fats, what are some examples of healthy fats that you can use for energy? Now, on a side note, fat is the body's preferred source of energy. High quality fats are the body's preferred source of energy. And some examples of good fats include high quality animal fats, animal meats, organ meats. Coconut oil is marvelous. One of the best fats. It's very high in medium chain triglycerides, which are very healthy, and lauric acid as well. Definitely want to look into coconut oil. Macadamia oil is also awesome. And basically, the healthiest fats you're going to get are going to come, eggs are also a good one, but the healthiest fats you're going to get are going to come from animal products. And for example, a perfect breakfast, if you're cutting carbs, is you get rid of the cereal, okay, and you cook 3 eggs in some grass-fed butter. And now it's very important that when I say healthy fats, and if they're coming from animals or whatever their source is, you want to make sure that they're coming from organic, grass-fed, pastured sources, or in the case of seafood, you want it to be wild caught, somewhere where preferably the level of toxins is very low in the water. But basically, animal fat stores a lot of these kinds of antibiotics and environmental pollutants. So it's especially important if, for example, you're buying beef, that you want your beef to be grass-fed, organic, and come from a farm that doesn't use pesticides and herbicides and all of these, and antibiotics and all these kinds of things, because then you're consuming those things as well. And that is very detrimental to your goals and to your health as well. Now, if you're used to eating carbs all the time, you're going to have to make this transition somewhat gradually. Now, what happens is once you stop eating the carbs and you begin eating the high quality fats instead, your body actually remembers how to process fat and how to metabolize fat. And it's a process called fat adaptation. And it takes a few weeks. It'll take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks for your body to sort of remember how to use fat as energy. And the best way to do this is to do this gradually, and I would start with breakfast. Now, in the US, for example, people are very keen on eating a high carbohydrate breakfast, something like cereal, or a muffin, or a donut, or fruits with yogurt. And I recommend that you start with your breakfast and you get rid of all of that, and you go for 3 or 4 eggs. Even 2 eggs is great, but 3 or 4 is even better. And you cook them in grass-fed butter. Kerrygold is an awesome butter that you can find pretty much anywhere. And you eat that for your breakfast. And you want to use a good bit of butter. Don't skimp on it. Remember, fat is your new energy source, so you have to replace the carbs with fat. And you have to make sure you're getting enough of it. And this is sort of where a lot of low-carb dieters go wrong, is they go high protein, but they go low fat. Well, protein is not an optimal energy source for the body, so if you go high protein and you have low fat and you have low carb, then you have no place for your energy to come from. So you do have to replace the carbs with fat, and butter and coconut oil and eggs and meat and all of these things are optimal or ideal for doing this. Now, how do I know that this is valid information and that it works? Well, aside from the hours and hours, probably hundreds of hours by now, of research that I've done on this topic, I've had dozens of private clients lose tremendous amounts of weight from this type of nutritional approach alone, and this excludes any exercise that they've done. In fact, some of my clients are very, very busy people, CEOs and whatnot, who don't have time for exercise, or they say they don't have time for exercise. But in any case, I've had them make modifications to their nutrition that involved cutting carbs and increasing fat intake. And just with this approach alone, they've lost sometimes dozens of pounds of weight, and their physique actually changed. You know, it's interesting that you can change your nutrition, and your body composition, the way that you look, will actually change as a result without any exercise on top of that. It's almost magical, but the body is magical, in fact. And I just saw all of these results, and I knew that I had to get this information out there, and to the public at large, and to people out there who may be struggling with their weight, who want to get that six-pack, who want all of the good benefits that are associated with having six-pack abs. And so I created this course called Six-Pack Success, and it's something that I've been building up to for a long time, and it's sort of a passion project of mine, and it's not really even something that I wanted to do, but my friends kind of pushed me, and they said, man, you've got to write a book or something. You've got to get this information out there in a way that the average person can understand, because let's face it, most of the health info and diet info out there is really complex and convoluted, and it's like, man, you have to be a scientist just to read some of this stuff. And so, that's what I did, and that's what I'm doing. That's what you're watching right now, is you're watching a lot of this same information that I share in the course. Now, some of the things that I've talked about, you may be thinking, well, I really don't have time to make all of these alterations to my diet, and isn't this food going to be more expensive? And what if I feel badly? And the truth is that making these alterations is really, really simple once you get most of that crap food out of your house. In other words, once you get your cereal boxes out and you throw them out and you replace them with eggs, you're good to go. Once you get your pasta and your rice out and you replace it with some grass-fed beef and some pastured chicken, you're good to go. This is just like anything. Change can be a little bit painful at first because it's uncomfortable. It's like, oh man, I have to undo my routine, but the truth is that it's a very minor adjustment, or a series of very minor adjustments that will be really, really easy for you to do if you just start today. Now, in terms of being expensive, this is really up to you, because, and it also has to do with where you live. If you live in the United States, certain items are going to be more expensive, like grass-fed beef is expensive here. But I know if you live abroad, maybe, where grass-fed beef is sort of the standard beef, then it'll be actually less expensive than grain-fed beef. But the point is that really these are very easy adjustments to make, and they don't take a lot of time. I know you're busy. I know you're a busy person. We're all running around trying to get our lives together and have some fun in between. And I get that. And it doesn't matter if you're out with your friends or what. Once you understand this idea, or you understand this principle of getting rid of carbs and increasing your good fat intake, you're going to be able to make these adjustments anywhere you go. You go to a restaurant and you ask for more vegetables instead of rice, with some butter or with some coconut oil or something. It's very easy to do, and you won't become a social outcast as a result. I know that was one of my big concerns, is that when I went out to eat with my friend, I'd pick these really particular things. They'd be eating whatever, anything under the sun, but I'd be picking these very kind of particular things. But you know what? To this day, I have not heard a single snide remark in my direction from any of my friends in terms of what I ordered and in terms of the modifications that I asked like a restaurant server to make, which kind of surprised me, because I kind of thought I would get some flack for being the outcast, but it never happened, and it's all good. And the beautiful thing is once you make these modifications, what you're really going to have to worry about is getting a tan, because you're going to start looking good with your shirt off. And I tell you, you get one thing handled, you get your six-pack abs handled, and then you have a whole new set of things to worry about. You can say these are high-quality problems, but you start having to worry about, oh man, maybe I need a tan, or maybe I should get a tattoo, to look cool, or we're all a little vain, and it's fine. But it's true, you get these fundamental things handled, and then all of these high-quality problems emerge. But I guess that's something that you would love to happen. It's certainly something that I looked forward to when I started out on this journey. So just some things to keep in mind. This is much easier to do than you think. And like I said, if you just implement the information that I've given you in these 3 videos alone, you're going to be good to go. And I would, of course, recommend that you do a little bit more research, you Google, and that you stay subscribed to my email list so that I can give you more information and help you out, and so that we can communicate. And if you have any questions, you could always mail me directly. That way you're going to have a resource, and you're going to have someone to go to if you're just not sure about something, because I know there's a lot of information out there and it can be very confusing. This is one of the reasons why I put together the 6-Pack Success course that you're going to hear about in a little while. I'm going to launch it soon, and it's sort of been on the down low. But of course, since you're on my list, you're going to hear about it. But I just want you to be able to do this as smoothly as possible, and without creating a bunch of friction in your life. You know, I'm sure you have enough going on to where you don't need to turn your life upside down just to get abs. So that's the goal here, and that's exactly what I want to help you achieve. And you know, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.